And this individual is saying that sometimes they see demons around people that seem to contribute to physical symptoms like high blood pressure or back pain. Can you explain why this might happen and share ways to help people address it and prevent it from recurring?
Again, as we have already explained, these are what appear to be externalized manifestations of an internal idea of fear-based or negative beliefs that crafts these demonic representations or archetypal forms out of the collective clay of the collective consciousness on the negative side of humanity. So someone may be capable of perceiving that another person is doing this, and they may empathically pick up on the idea of that this manifestation has a certain form to it, a certain energy to it that can be represented archetypally in the shape of what humanity has labeled as a demon. But again, you can be aware that this is simply a projection of that person going through that experience, experiencing their own negative energy in that way. But a person might be sensitive enough to pick up on that and actually see the manifestations as if they truly were external independent entities, which they are not.
And this individual says, as a mental health therapist, they treat clients labeled with schizophrenia, bipolar, paranoia, and borderline personality disorders. These clients represent or report having delusions and hallucinations of demons and voices.
Yes.
Could you explain what is occurring in those, well, I think you've explained it, but, and how they might be assisted in understanding what's happening so they can gain insight and connection to their higher self and feel more in control of their lives?
Well, if they are willing to receive it, if they are willing to accept it, the explanation we have already given about how demonic reflections are created out of the collective clay of the consciousness that is negative of humanity, if that can be shared, that idea can be explained to an individual, they can begin to get in touch with taking responsibility and diving into their belief systems of how they feel about themselves, why they would continue to torture or punish themselves that way, then perhaps they can be helped if they're willing to accept that understanding. So everything that we've already talked about can be of help to those individuals, but they simply have to be willing to understand, to listen, to absorb and accept that explanation and take responsibility for it, which is not meaning to blame themselves, but just to understand the mechanism of how these things work so they can get in touch with negative beliefs they may have picked up along the way in their life and understand that those negative beliefs may have been, shall we say, telepathically reinforced within them in growing up, and can understand now that they have the freedom and the self-empowerment to let those beliefs go, that they really have no reason to perpetuate those beliefs against themselves in that way and have those kinds of experiences. But again, on top of all that, remember that sometimes an individual will, on their life path, choose to exhibit certain conditions, certain experiences that might help others figure out how to deal with them, how to cure, how to solve, so on and so forth. So sometimes an individual will choose that particular experience to help others figure out how to deal with it so that humanity can improve and understand its relationship to those kinds of conditions more fully. So it depends upon the life path as to why that individual may be experiencing that thing and how they may be serving others in having chosen to do so as a soul.
Thank you. This person is asking, how can I approach troubling topics such as war crimes and the ritual abuse of children? Are these issues reflections of aspects of myself that I am rejecting? If I view them as a mirror to heal my own wounds, I may not perceive them in my reality, but I feel a sense of responsibility to those who are suffering. I want to avoid adding energy to those dark issues by fixating on them, yet I also don't want to deny their existence or feel as though I'm abandoning those in need. How can I navigate this situation in a way that is beneficial for everyone involved?
All right, this goes back to what we have said about the idea of reflections in your reality. It doesn't mean that what you see is a one-to-one reflection of something that is an issue within you that you need to deal with literally and directly. However, if you can perceive it in your reality, the idea is you can help where you can. You can take the actions to help mitigate the suffering of others in some way, shape, or form, if possible. So the idea is not that you fixate on it, but that you're aware of it. You recognize that as you perceive it, it may be that the reflection for you is it gives you an opportunity to help those individuals cease their suffering. So take actions in a positive direction, in a loving direction that might help mitigate their suffering, and you will be doing what it is perhaps that you need to do to figure out the reason why that is in your life. It doesn't mean that you necessarily are adding to their negativity if you are willing to help them find a way to exit from the suffering that they have been experiencing because of their belief systems or their experiences in life. So by all means, you can be of great assistance. You don't have to worry about adding to their suffering just because you are aware of their situation.
And can you explain spiritual warfare, hell, and the duality that is inside all of us?
Well, the duality that's inside everyone is simply a reflection of the polarity that is part of existence, the negative and the positive. I'm speaking mechanically, the idea of lower vibrations, higher frequencies, light and dark, so on and so forth. Positive, negative, mechanically speaking. Positive being that which connects and expands, negative being that which creates the experience of separation and diminishment. But these are just mechanical energies that exist on every level of existence. So the idea is the duality is just a natural state of existence, and you can learn to balance it in a way that you can then choose what you prefer to experience rather than succumbing to beliefs that might be negative or fear-based that would allow you to experience things you don't prefer. Spiritual warfare doesn't really exist. The idea, again, is that hell doesn't really exist, except as you make it, except as you deem it to be true for yourself. You will experience suffering and negativity in a way that could be described as a living hell. So the place itself is not real. People who believe in hell, when they die, if they really believe strongly enough that they will experience the idea of the so-called burning fires of hell, or however they have chosen to represent that concept, may experience it for a brief split second, because what you think, what you believe in spirit is instantly experienced, but the instant that they would experience it, it would be so awful that they would wish that they would not experience it, and then they would stop experiencing it in spirit, because things happen instantaneously in spirit because time is different there. Spiritual warfare is a contradiction in terms. If you are spiritual, there is no warfare. The idea of conflict in that sense has to do with succumbing to fear-based and negative vibrations that would cause one to suffer, to struggle, to experience conflict, so on and so forth, to experience opposition in that sense. Whereas a being that is truly more balanced in its spirituality will never experience those things and would experience more of a flow and an ease in communication and in concept. So the idea of spiritual warfare, in a sense, doesn't really exist.
And this individual is saying, people say negative thoughts can manifest. What shall we do about all of the thoughts which we've already thought? Can we undo them? How do we clear past negative thoughts and patterns from our minds and aura? Is there a meditation, prayer, or visualization technique that can help?
If you have a negative thought, again, it's all right to deal with it. It's all right to recognize it. It's all right to allow it. Don't obsess over it. That's what causes the manifestation, is focusing too much negativity and fear on having a negative thought, judging yourself harshly for having the negative thought. being afraid to have the negative thoughts can actually cause manifestations of negativity. But if a negative thought comes up, it's like acknowledge it, recognize it, say, okay, let me explore why I'm having this. Let me see if this is an indication that I'm holding on to some kind of fear-based or negative belief about myself that would perpetuate these negative thoughts. Let me work with that. Let me see if I can find the root cause of why these negative thoughts are coming up so that I can let them go. So not being afraid, ironically, of having negative thoughts is what will allow you to make sure that they actually don't manifest in physical reality. Working with them in a positive way, using them to discover your deep-seated negative or fear-based beliefs that may be in your unconscious mind is a way to use them in a positive context. So don't be afraid of having them, just work with them in a positive way and they will not manifest beyond the idea of simply recognizing that you have them.
Okay, and this person is saying that they've noticed that the more enlightened they become, the more darkness in society is revealed.
Yes.
And they want to know if this is a collective purging or is this shadow work that the individual needs to do. And that the idea that this demonic energy shows up whenever things are going great in their life, and then they are not sure what to make of that.
All right. This is what we have said before about the idea of the expansion of consciousness, broadening your bandwidth. Remember, duality exists on every level of existence. Therefore, the more you expand your consciousness, the more aware you become of more of existence, the more you're going to recognize not only more light, but also more darkness. Now, just the recognition of it doesn't do anything. Just keep it in balance. If you start worrying that you're seeing more darkness, then you're going in a negative direction with it. So you have to understand it's a natural result of the expansion of consciousness that you would become more aware of the darkness as well as more aware of the light. But if you remain in balance with that observation and just make it a neutral observation, then you can still choose what you prefer without worrying that the negative side is going to manifest that you don't prefer. So stay neutral with the observation that you're going to recognize more light and darkness as you expand your consciousness, and everything will remain in balance and you can choose what you prefer to experience.
Okay, and this person has been noticing a third eye tattoo on various people, and they feel like it's a form of synchronicity. They even saw someone walking at a traffic light and then somebody on a train. And so what does this tattoo symbolize?
Well, as a synchronicity, it could be a message from your spirit guides urging you and encouraging you to actually work on your psychic and empathic and telepathic abilities. So you might be getting that synchronicity to remind you to use your intuition more. So go ahead, follow your intuition. Practice being more telepathic. Practice being in love with humanity. Practice being more empathic with other individuals. Open up the idea of your third eye. This might be a message from your spirit guides that you need to focus on that a little bit more.
And this person is saying, while I understand the only way I can feel an external energy is actually feeling my energy match that, how do I completely rid myself of the effects I feel when another is intentionally sending negative and painful energies? I seem stuck in a paradox.
Well, again, you have already recognized that it's your own energy matching their frequency, so you would have to ask yourself, what reasons are you creating within your consciousness for matching their frequency? Because you wouldn't have any effects whatsoever if you didn't match their frequency. So any residual effects means you're still matching that lower frequency. So you have to ask yourself why you would have a reason to do so, and find out what that belief system is telling you, what story it's telling you that makes it seem logical for you to keep matching that frequency and feeling those effects. because you will not feel the effects if you stop matching that frequency. So find the reason you're creating, the reason you're generating that seems for some reason to be a logical reason to continue to match that lower frequency.
Okay, and this person is saying basically that if they express something and another person perceives it as divisive or dismissive while others do not, how much responsibility do we actually bear for those perceptions? And it's along the idea of gaslighting, let's say, where you have another person that is insisting on what is happening, which is inaccurate.
That's an extreme example that isn't quite the point of the question. The idea is that in normal communication, it's always good to attempt to be as clear about your intention of what you're attempting to communicate as possible. So by all means, you're responsible for taking some time to make sure that your communications are not in any way, shape, or form reflective of some kind of unconscious hidden agenda that might color your words and might charge the words with some kind of an emotion that you may not be aware of that could trigger someone else. Now, their reaction to it is their issue and not yours, as long as you are making sure that your intention is as clear as possible, your communication is as clear, balanced as possible. Do your best to do your part to communicate clearly your intention. You can always apologize if you have made a mistake in how you wish to communicate something and say, that's not really what I meant, I'm sorry, let me try to clear that up. And so you're always making sure that you're being clear in what it is you're communicating. At the same time, you are not responsible for any negative reactions in someone else who might have their own belief system filters that are choosing to misinterpret what you are saying. So it takes both sides to have really clear co-communication. You make sure your intentions are clear, they make sure that what they are receiving is clear, so they have the duty on their side and the responsibility on their side, instead of reacting with a knee-jerk triggered reaction to say, all right, I'm feeling that what you said is causing some triggering within me. Did you mean this or did you mean that? Let me also clarify the situation by making sure that what I'm experiencing is not coming from you, but is coming from me, and let me ask you to clear the air and specify in your communication what you actually intended to say. So that communication needs to happen from both directions. The concept that you're calling gaslighting is obviously an intentionally negative form of communication that of course will cause certain reactions in others because it's intentional. You have a hidden agenda for what it is you are communicating. So that's a little bit different than the idea of being unaware and unconscious about what you might be communicating and attempting to be clearer about it on both directions in the receiving end and the sending end, as opposed to someone who is literally intending to cause miscommunication and misunderstanding in someone.
Okay. And this person is wondering how to let go and release negative dark habits. How do you replace the empty gap of an old habit when your mind is still being pulled in a negative direction? I understand filling the time with our greatest excitement, but how do we rid the negative habits forever and overcome these addictive habits?
All right. Again, remember, a habit is something you do you don't know you're doing. If you know you have a habit, it's not a habit, it's a choice. So you have no empty gaps. You will always fill it with some belief. You have to. If you had an empty gap, you would have an unconscious moment in the idea of your experience of physical reality. You wouldn't be creating physical reality. You always have to believe something to be true, positively or negatively or neutrally. So again, the idea is you have to own the concept that it is a choice you are making, maybe unconsciously, but this goes to, again, what we call the motivational mechanism in all humans. You will always choose what you believe is to your benefit. You will always move away from what you believe is not to your benefit, but the key word is belief. You may see that you're choosing something that is negative, that you don't prefer, but if you do keep choosing it,